This meeting is being recorded.
Right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jessica Fox. I'm representing Highlands Islands Enterprise and Like Dark Light today in hosting Antoine and Sam for this documentary workshop. Welcome, Antoine and Sam. I just want to thank both organizations for this workshop. If anyone has any questions, there is a chat box at the bottom of the screen that you can put your questions in, and this will be recorded and available via Highlands Islands Enterprise. So you can watch it again and make it available to folks that need it. But I will let them, these wonderful filmmakers, introduce themselves, and I will hide in the background. But it's nice seeing everyone here. And Antoine and Sam, welcome.
Thanks, Jessica. Cheers. Yeah, guys, if you want, I think we're gonna do some questions and stuff at the end. So if you want to turn on your cameras, we can see you and chat with you. If not, you can pop in the comments box or just write questions down for the end and we can go through it. But yeah, I'm Sam. I'm a filmmaker and photographer from Scotland. Um, and yeah, this is Antoine, and we work together a lot. And yeah, over the past like 3 years, we've been working on various documentary pieces and one long form documentary piece. And yeah, I guess the purpose of today is to share with you guys how we would plan for the production of a documentary from day one. So yeah, Antoine, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey, thanks for joining the session. Super cool to be able to share a little bit of our experiences and the things that we've been through just to like help folks out. Yeah, the main thing from our perspective was like we've between us made a couple films, actually still ongoing, but we've learned so much through that journey. And there's so many things that we want to get across and help people with, so that if you've got a story that you're really hungry to tell, or this, projects that are in the back of your mind, like we want to communicate the things that we've been through that have been, that have caused us headaches or that we've picked up along the way and gone, oh man, like that would have been so cool to know, like right off the bat. But yeah, so like, yeah, we'll break it down. You'll have seen from the outline, really just from development all the way to distribution. When you're starting your film, you want to just go out and like tell a story and make a thing, and that's really awesome. And I think we would both encourage that, but it's really good, like at every step of the way, like right from the beginning, to just be aware of some key things, and to be able to anticipate those things so that you don't cause yourself headache on along the way.
Yeah, so just for a wee bit of an intro, obviously this is focused on the production of a documentary, so like the production and logistics sides of making your documentary happen and planning it out correctly. But like there's a few things that you should really have like outlined before you do that, and one would be like a story that you're super passionate about, and a strong character, and hopefully they will have some sort of end goal and some challenges or hurdles along the way that they have to overcome. So we're looking for having a really strong story already and having an idea of where that story is going to go. And the reason I say something that you're really passionate about is because well, we're assuming like most of the people here are kind of intermediate documentary makers. It takes a lot of energy to make these stories, and sometimes it's gonna test you, and it's gonna be harder than you think sometimes as well. So yeah, it's just having the love for it, that you want to see it finish, like sometimes even when it doesn't seem like it's going your way. So it's good to have those things down. um but yeah, what we're going to outline for you guys is like the ideal way that you would go about it if you had all the time to do it, and you knew your story and you knew your outline. But then there is sometimes going to be cases like the documentary that me and Antoine have been working on the past 3 years, about a young surfer, where we we had to go out and start filming that because we felt like we were going to miss things. So what we're going to outline is if you could plan it all pre-hand, but sometimes there's going to be cases where you're going to have to go out and start shooting. And but then I'd always recommend coming back as quickly as you can to try and make some sort of plan and outline for your budget and everything else we're about to go through.
Yeah. So first thing on that is like just making sure that you understand the different stages. So maybe breaking up a timeline and understanding you've got your development, which I'll get into in a second, your pre-production, your production, your post-production, and your distribution, and understanding that every single one of these phases has its own costs and its own challenges and needs its own time frame to be considered. I want to make real quick a distinction between development and pre-production because that maybe is not always clear. Development's really like what's the film you're trying to make and why you're trying to make it. And it's just like the very, very early stages, like, who's the character, as Sam was saying, like, what's special about that character? Do they have a good story, or is this somebody unique that's got a story that you can tell? Maybe there's several characters. Maybe there's contributors around your main character that you want to, that you're identifying. So it's just figuring out who those people are, potentially doing some pre-interviews which is, without a mic, without a camera, whatever, just meeting those people, and starting to build a relationship with them, figuring out if this is going to be someone who A, has a good story, but B, also is maybe a good speaker, or is someone who would be good in front of a camera. Like I've done some stuff in the past that hasn't really seen like an audience because I just felt like the character didn't really come across well, and I was just like really keen to make this thing, and it was great practice and great to cut my teeth, but it was like a lesson learned. Like definitely make sure you figure out like, okay, is this going to be someone who's going to be good on screen and who's going to be good at telling their story too? That's something to consider. Then there's also like, writing decks, writing treatments, applying for grants, knowing your topic. Like, I mean, when Sam and I made started this documentary, we're both surfers, so that was kind of easy, and we fortunately didn't have to do that. But a lot of the learning still was like, okay, our athlete surfs really big waves. Like, what's that world like? What does that scene look like? Professionally, what's he going to run into? Who are the people that he has to speak to? How does it work logistically, like down on the beach on jet skis and in and out of harbors and stuff? What are the rules like that aren't written, right? So all that you have to learn. On my film, I did like a documentary about like sewage pollution on the coast and how it was affecting members of the community. And although it was kind of character driven and following like a couple really specific characters and like their experiences and what they were going through, it felt like journalism. I felt like I can't tell a story about this without knowing the topic like really thoroughly. Otherwise I'm going to make a mistake or I'm not going to do the story justice. So that's really important. And then, yeah, just securing access to the various like people that you want to film with. Like if you can't get in close to those people, like where they hang out, and you're kind of always like on the outskirts, like filming them when they're out and about or whatever, and you can't get that like intimate access to their like day-to-day lives, it's going to be a lot harder to capture those really special, those like powerful moments and those things that, really make your film unique in a lot of ways. And just to add something on the grants front, sometimes like in the development phase, it's really useful to build like a teaser or a sizzle or something. Like it's probably important just to go out and shoot something. Like it's good having an idea and it's good having a deck with pretty pictures and an idea of the story that you want to tell and knowing your character and all that. But sometimes like an idea is just not enough, especially in like the way that the industry is just now. It's like really, really competitive. And there are actually grants out there. I wasn't aware of this like early on when I started making stuff. I just started shooting stuff, right? And there are development grants that you can get that will actually fund you to go out and shoot a trailer, which is essentially to help put you in a position where you can go out, develop a story, develop a really like just something more than just an idea that can help you then in later stages for your grant applications. There's actually a list of grants that we have here that I'll put in the chat in just a second, which is like basically, I think it's called the International Documentary Association. Like they endorse like all of these funds, and that they're all legit. So it's a really useful database. And there'll be things like, I don't know, if your project is environmental, or it's got you know, it includes like ethnic minorities, or not even, maybe you've just got something like totally unique and you're really excited about. You never know, there might be a grant that you can apply to right now, like even before you've started making your film, or at whatever stage that you're at. So it's really worth going through that. I'll just copy that in the link. Sam's going to talk about like another option to your funding to consider, which is like private sponsors and grants real quick.
Yeah. So guys, I know this is all quite like high level and we're going to go through a lot of points here, but we will supply you guys with the notes after so you can see a bit of a breakdown of it. And that'll give you an idea of all these areas. And then I feel like each one of these areas in itself could be a discussion or a talk or a presentation. Like there's so much detail to go into every one, but I think it's good that we give you a high level understanding of these things first. So yeah, we've kind of so far we've gone through an intro. We've gone through what Antoine's just done, developing a clear and realistic production timeline. And then, yeah, so back to kind of grants and ways of sort of funding your project. So I'd say there's like kind of two or three like main ways that you could fund your project. One would be through grants. So that would be through things like, I don't know, Creative Scotland grants and things like that, and the ones that are on the list that Antoine's just sent you. Then there's private sponsors and angel investors. So this could be like people that are, say it's an environmental film, people that are really interested in the environment and really want to help that cause develop. You could search for angel investors or private sponsors through that. Or there's brand and company collaboration sponsorship. And there's like definitely pros and cons of each, and there's definitely good times to apply and some things you should think about. So looking at grants and like when you're starting to film your documentary, one thing I'd really consider before you dive into filming your documentary is like, are you ready to start shooting now? And do you have to start shooting now, or can you wait? Because with some grants, if you start shooting and you start developing your documentary, it's sometimes harder to secure those grants further down the line because they either want to be involved with the development, as Antoine was talking about, or they want to be involved with the pre-production, or they want to be involved with the whole project. It's the same if you were trying to connect to like a large distributor, which would be another way of supporting your project, like the BBC or something like that. You really want to have them involved from the start because they might want to have input on the project. So yeah, it's really good to start to plan all of those things out, like a shoot timeline and budget and things like Antoine was talking about, and then just yeah, make sure you're doing it at the right time, you know. There's pros and cons for sure for grants and private sponsors. I think like with grants, it can be quite time consuming to apply for them. It can take a long time. There's lots of hoops to jump through, and you might have to structure your project in a certain way. With private sponsorships or brands, that's the way that we did our documentary. We brought on a bunch of private sponsors and worked with them. But then that can sometimes create extra work. Like we've had really good flexibility and really good, like we've just taken full creative lead on our project, but we've also had to develop a bunch of deliverables to make the documentary profitable for those brands and more interesting and enticing for them to be involved in. So yeah, there's a few different things to kind of look into there. Yeah, I guess Anton, we don't have too much time, so maybe we just keep moving through.
Yeah. Yeah, so just real quick to go back to that point of the separation between development and pre-production. So that was kind of like the what and why, like all the things you got to think about right off the bat. And then pre-production, just so that it's clear, is like, you know, how you're going to go about making this thing when it's kind of like figuring out all of the logistics and, you know, the gear, the crew, the like how many days you're going to be shooting for, like when your interviews are going to be, like what kit you need for everything. It's like where the real like producing needs to come in, all the planning and stuff. And really that just avoids like just chaos when you're on set and headaches. Like your aim here is that you want to be able to just press record when production starts and everything's ready. Everything's like ready to go. And then obviously after that, it's, you know, production, which is just the shooting of it. the recording, the post-production, which is all the editing, and distribution, which is like getting an audience to like see your film and like giving your film a home somewhere. I would say like one of the biggest assets in the, I suppose both of those phases, like before you start shooting that we've had, Sam and I, was like putting together an edit on paper, or at least before you've even shot anything, having a really clear idea of what your story is. So that's like, you know, what your character, who your character is, like what they want, what are the potential obstacles in front of them, you know, like what's the story, what's the arc. It's trying to figure that stuff out, or at least as much of it as possible, and then roughly how you think the story is going to end, and having all of that laid out on paper so that you can plan what you're going to go and shoot. Obviously, documentary, unless you're telling a story that's like purely set in the past, if it's kind of here and now, if it's stuff that's kind of ongoing, that's happening, and you're trying to like, you know, you're shooting a film with a lot of unknown ahead of you, then you can't plan for everything. But as much prep as you can put in place is really gonna like, is really gonna help you plan, budget, you know, think ahead, and again, just you know, save you a bunch of headaches in the future. And then the last thing I'd say about all this stuff is just make sure that when you're planning this timeline, you know, between development and your distribution, that you like, you're not too optimistic. It's like a human thing to think that you've got more time than you've got. Really just make sure that there's buffer periods, and account for just delays and problems and things going wrong, like the weather not playing ball, or like someone not being available for 2 weeks when you thought they were going to be, like, or you're not having access to a location. Like, you always got to be like super agile, super flexible, and ready for change, but allow time for that. That's the main thing.
Cool. Yeah, do you want to go into crew and stuff like that, or do you want me to just jump into that on my next part?
I'll let you go. I think, was it like,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
All right, nice. So yeah, I think like a little bit more on budgeting effectively. This is such a hard thing to do. Again, like, and again, we're aiming this more intermediate and beginner photography, documentary filmers and directors. So like you kind of got to take this stuff with a pinch of salt and decide for you what are the key aspects that you really need to cover and what you really need to do. Because like, you know, if you had a huge budget and a huge team, like you'd have to consider absolutely everything we're going to say, and you'd have to make sure everything was done to a T, but that's not the world that we live in all the time. So like we'll be totally honest with you. With our previous documentary, you know, we had to let some things go, and then we had to focus on some things that were really important. And then we also made mistakes as well. You know, we maybe didn't do certain things that we wish we did further down the line, and they came back and bit us a little bit. But all in all, it worked out pretty well, I think. But yeah, we ended up putting in a lot of hours into our main documentary, Beyond the Island, and but yeah, we're really happy with it. But I think the first thing is just like writing down, or maybe even getting some guidance on the costs of a documentary first. Really look up online, like look up some different budgets, look up some example budgets. ChatGPT and stuff like that is a really good way to do it. If you want like a quick outline, go into ChatGPT, ask for it to create you an example budget referring to like IMDb and other reliable sources. It's like a really good way to code it, and it will give you something pretty solid, and you can maybe go off that. But I think the key is just to make sure you're accounting for all your time. And like maybe you're going to give some of that time in kind, maybe you're going to get paid for it, but just be aware of the amount of time it's going to take you. And then another thing would be costs and any hidden costs, and then also having contingency, as Antoine said before. And you should really put on like a 10 to 15% contingency, maybe even more for unexpected expenses. That could be anything like, maybe you need to hire a piece of equipment. Maybe you drop your camera and you smash it and you have to pay your insurance fees. Like we've done that. Maybe you have a hard drive failure. Maybe like one of your trips doesn't work out and you don't get the stuff, what you need. So you have to go back and rebook it. So yeah, those are all the things that you need to take into account. And like I think a big tip for your first documentary would be to probably, unless you have something you really, really want to go after, like we did, and we ended up doing like we did some small ones, we ended up doing a 3-year one. Try start small and like learn these things on a small level and then start to build it up because it's easy to get carried away with yourself. And if you have the energy to go after it, it can be great, but it can also be a very steep learning curve. So, but yeah, the cost of a documentary, we can split that into like this sounds a bit technical, but we can split it into above the line and below the line. So above the line is the guys that are going to be leading this thing. Is going to be the story, the creative leadership team, and that'll be the director, the producer, the writer, and then potentially any sort of talent that you have, depending on how involved with the documentary they are. And then we have below the line, which is like the technical execution of the project. So that's everything from like your crew, your equipment rental, your travel and accommodation, food, drink, location costs, insurance. Really key. I'd really recommend having insurance. Like, you're liable, especially if you're working with brands and companies and stuff, you're liable for the way that they're portrayed sometimes. Insurance on your equipment in case anything goes wrong. That's obviously down to you. If you're using a small, cheap, like more affordable camera, maybe it's not worth insuring it. Like that's a call that you have to kind of make. And then obviously post-production, office expenses, hard drives, which can get very expensive depending how much you're filming, all these different things. But yeah, again, like the above the line and below the line, if you're shooting a documentary with yourself or a small team, like those things definitely get blurred. Like you might be directing, producing, and filming, or you might be editing and filming. And me and Antoine have done that. We've worn many different hats. So I think it's really good to budget it all out, and then you can split it up to suit yourself. Antoine's just popped in there as well, public liability insurance, because you're obviously liable for where you are filming, and if you cause any harm to anyone else. I think it's something that's good to have and make sure you're covered properly. Yeah, so just try to think if I've missed anything there. I guess for budgeting as well, there's one thing we kind of learned is that you might have to have multiple different budgets depending on who you're pitching to. I think it's really good to have a bare bones budget. So this is the budget that you can do it on. Maybe you're not going to pay yourself full industry rate, or maybe you have a friend helping you out doing certain aspects. So that's your bare bone budget on what you can do it for without bankrupting yourself. So I think it's key to have that. And then depending on whether you're applying to grants or to company sponsorships or private sponsorships, again, it's usually worth having different budgets for both of those. So depending on the grant that you're applying to, if you're applying to quite a high level grant, these guys are going to be looking for a proper budget. So a budget that includes industry standard rates. So if you went to them, say you were doing a 3-year documentary and you went to them with a 20, 40, I don't know, grand budget, they're not going to take that seriously because it's not fitting with industry standards. So you've got to try and research industry standards and figure out like how much of the day rate's going to cost, how much is the producer and director and writer's fees going to be, and lay that out. And it might come to quite a large number. It might come to like 100,000 or however much, depending on the size of your documentary. But it's key to have those two different budgets. And then I guess the third budget would be if you wanted to do privately sponsored docs or company sponsored docs. You got to think on how big that company is, what can they contribute, what are they going to get in return for their investment, and align the cost of your documentary with that in a way. I hope that makes sense. That's quite a lot to go through.
Yeah. Here, just wanted to add something, like when you're on your own, or you're maybe just there's two of you look at all these different line items, and like there's loads of templates online as well that you can pick up, like to help make sure that you're thinking of all the different costs that you could come across. And a lot of them are set up for like full like productions with whole teams and stuff. So you're there like, oh, but I'm on my own, or I'm only with one other person. Like I can't charge for all this stuff because I'm only one person. And really like there's two ways you can think about this. You can like combine some of the costs. So like if, for example, there's a line item for a director and another one for like a DOP, but you know that when you know, and a producer and loads of these other things, but you know that you're gonna have to wear a lot of hats. What you can do is put like a fee down for like self-shooting director, for example. You can just try and like combine some of the costs into like a single role. But really, like I would just really recommend that you don't like kill off any of the fees, because you're like, well, I'll just do the audio, so it's fine. I don't need a fee for an audio person, or like I'm doing all these roles anyway, so I'll just not charge for that stuff because we're not going to have a crew member like to do that specific role. That work still needs doing, especially like, you know, the post-production stuff, the editing, like, you know, if you've got audio equipment that you've paid for or rented or whatever, like, you know, somebody still needs to put in that expertise and that time. So especially for when you're applying to grants and things, like definitely don't neglect those. Like bonus, if you can get the cash, then you can maybe even potentially hire someone for it. It's just you don't want to sell yourself short because it's difficult. So if you're like lowballing yourself right off the bat because you're like, well, I don't have much experience and like I don't necessarily have the crew and it's just me, like they don't need to know any of that. They don't need to know any of it. You just got to make sure that you're like thinking about all the costs that you're going to come across and then find some solutions like with as much as you can get. And that's going to be different with grants than it's going to be for private sponsor or private investors and brands and things. Like it's a different relationship. There's the budgets are often a little bit smaller. I still wouldn't neglect the costs that are real and that are there, or like I would never sell yourself short, and just basically try and raise as much money as you can, because you'll set yourself up like so much better. I think we can we move on to the next point? I'm thinking
Just to add, sorry, just to add to your point, like I think the reason as well for grant applications to have all those different roles as well is because quite often like grants like Creative Scotland are looking for a team to work on this rather than all the money going into one person's pocket. So it is quite good to have those roles divided out. And it also means that like you can diversify and you can get more people on board, and quite often having a more diverse team it puts you in a stronger foothold for a grant as well. So yeah, just consider that. But yeah, I think we should jump on to the next because there's so much to go through here. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, like if there's something that you really don't understand, maybe you can jump in as well and let us know. But we'll keep going through just now.
Yeah, just to keep the flow, maybe the best thing is just like chuck a comment in the chat and we'll get to it. Or we'll do our best to get to it. If not, maybe we can pick up afterwards. Yeah, so the next thing is like just logistics. This is like it's like an area that you can't really know, I guess, until you just like get stuck in. But I was on a job recently where I had a producer, it's like a little mini doc series, and I had a producer that was able to take care of like all this stuff and anticipate it, and it was an absolute lifesaver. And that's like, you know, so you're just getting like permits and access to locations. Like you might have a character that you want to go and film something in, like in a look, you know, during an event or in a public space, or you know, like you're not necessarily going to be allowed to film or use footage that you've shot in like anywhere in the world. Like sometimes you need permissions. It's just something that's important to be aware of. Depending on like who you end up distributing with, and like, you know, if you find a distributor like nice and early and someone's interested in your project, and they tell you, hey, like we're gonna, you know, put this on TV, or we're gonna stick this on our big famous channel online, then there might be requirements right off the bat for getting permissions like a lot more often, like in a lot more places, just because like that's how it goes. So whatever it is you're working on, like chances are if you're earlier on, you're not going to run into those issues as much. You can kind of like, yeah, like make sure you're informed so that you don't have any like nasty surprises. I think also like just generally, just on the point of like access, I spoke about this before, but yeah, you just want to make sure that, I mean, to be honest, we've covered a lot of this stuff already, but just like, yeah, again, just make sure that you've got like good access to your character, that there's not going to be any like legal or permission restrictions. Like maybe it's like an athlete that goes to like big competitions and events and stuff, and you got to make sure that you're going to be able to have access to like go behind the scenes with them and go where they go. And because the last thing you want is to get bounced by someone and you've got your camera and you're ready to tell a story and they go and they're like, well, I've got my event, or I've got my thing that I got to go and do, like, you know, music artist or something, and you're not allowed to go through with them. Like that would be wild. So just make sure you've got all of those things in ahead of time. And then yeah, this is a weird one, but it's definitely something that just to be aware of. When you're traveling and you've got a bunch of kit, like ideally you want just a backpack and squeeze, you know, little small lighting packages and bits and pieces in your suitcase with you if you can. Um, Sometimes like the gear you end up with like tripods and like light stands and all this stuff. Like if you've got all that, you end up look like needing pelly cases or big bags for it. And in airports, if you have to travel between countries, you can get picked up for that, and you can get spotted like on your way out the airport, at the like nothing to declare bit, and they go, "Hey, like, what are those bags? Like, can we have a look at what's inside them?" And what we discovered, like when we were first making this, is you need something called a carnet when you've got like visibly loads of like equipment and stuff. And it's basically a way for, I don't know what you'd call them, the government, let's just call it the government, like for them to make sure that there's not like high value equipment being traded back and forth like untaxed. So it's like a thing you have to declare. There is a cost, a yearly cost to a carnet. So it's just something to be aware of. Like I've heard some horror stories of people who've got like all this equipment and it's, you know, and maybe they've rented it out, but like you have to have the value of what you've got, and the fine basically for not having a carnet is like it's like a percentage of the worth of the goods, which can end up like crushing you. So it's something, I don't want to like scare anybody. It's just one of those things you have to be aware of. And an easy way around it is if you're, you know, solo filming or a small team, and you just keep your kit package nice and small. Like nowadays, it's easier than ever to do it. Like lights, you know, you can fit small lights that pack a punch into your suitcases. Like I can't name all of them, but there's loads of them. Cameras can fit in your bag. You know, just keep the package as small as you can, and you'll be okay for that.
Yeah, that's what we did. Like on our we did a 3-year doc and went to loads of different countries, and we just put our cameras in a backpack, and yeah, just we had like water housings, drones, and everything like that, and just kept it super small, just so we didn't have to pay that carnet. So some of these things we are talking about is for like larger projects, but it's good to be aware of them.
Yeah, like even if you've got an instrument or something, like the reason I pointed out is like if you've got a, I don't know, you want to protect your camera, so you're like, oh, I know, I'll get a pelly case. Or like you could just be somebody's going through the airport and you've got your like double bass, or I don't know, it's like an instrument that's pretty big that needs its own thing, or keyboard or something. Like you can get picked up, literally, you can get spotted and go, hey, what's in there? And like you need a carnet for one of those. So it's just like just just be aware. That was the only thing. I just wanted to point that out. Like it's not necessarily just if you're on a big production or not. It's just being aware of like how it looks when you walk through an airport, which sounds super dodgy, but yeah, just something that, yeah, just give it a Google or a GPT. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Oh, is that section? You happy? I think
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's just one more thing that I'd add to that section of access and insurance and permits and things like that would be contracts. And it comes with what Antoine said about building a relationship with contributors or project sponsors early on. It's like really build that relationship like on a personal level, like really try and engage with them, because that will gain you the trust to give you like the most access to tell the story that you want to tell, you know? Like if someone trusts you, they're gonna open up to you more, and um they're gonna show you their real side, which gives like a true documentary. But another thing to have there is a contract, and it's really good to have that contract with your characters. Something we learned from, we didn't do it early on enough. and also with your sponsors, which we were better at doing that. But even if it's someone that you've worked with for a long time, it's like you need to have that contract, because it's not to trick anyone or anything like that. It's just an agreement between you so that you can refer back to it in future. And it really outlines everything from the start. And it's good to say to them as well, like, this is flexible, if you want to change the contract, if there's things that change, we can come back and discuss it. But like, for example, this is what it is setting out. And I think that's a really key thing to have. I just saw a wee comment in the chat there from Peter. Yeah, about carnets and visas. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, Peter's saying that a lot of countries have their own advice on it. So yeah, it's definitely good to refer to it country by country. But yeah, I guess on to the next part.
Here,
Would
sorry,
be
I just want to reiterate, like, because we're trying to cover so much ground, but like what you just said there is like so important. Like, I'm just realizing I don't want to brush over that too much, because it's like actually so critical. The two things that you said, like the relationship building thing. Yeah, I mean, you'll hear this everywhere, but build a relationship. Like, don't bring a camera or microphones or anything with you when you first meet your character. Just you kind of just want to like get to know them like a regular human being, and almost like just establish a friendship first. And as soon as they sense that you're like invested in their story and in their journey, and they've seen, maybe an element of vulnerability from you, like, it's just a human relationship, right? You're building a relationship. That's going to make things so much easier. And like, the more comfortable they are with you, the more like the easier it's going to be when all the lights and all the cameras and everything are up, for them to just open up and speak to you honestly. It's honestly, it's so critical. Otherwise you get like really rigid responses. There's nothing worse than like sitting in an interview, like knowing that the person you've just asked a question to, like, your character is like not giving you the full truth. Like, and you can usually tell. And it's like, it's frustrating, because it's like this, it's like a tightrope. It's this balance. You want to make sure that the relationship is good, so that you get as authentic a representation, because you are like in these people's private lives with a camera pointed at them for an extended period of time sometimes. So,
yeah, you could do a
the other thing,
whole other podcast, a whole other talk on that. I feel that section. It's like it's
yeah, no, totally.
a long one to go down. Right. So I think we probably got like 8 minutes or so until we have to open up for questions. So we'll just fire through this next bit. But yeah, another one would just be always plan for production delays, changes to your documentary story. I'm just going to move through this quite quickly, but it is really important. And one thing I'd say is always try and like communicate with your character or your funder or your clients. If you feel like you haven't communicated with them frequently enough and you have that gut feeling, it's probably true. Always try, if there's something that is changing, always try and make them aware. Don't be afraid. Like, say your project's getting bigger or your storyline has changed. It's really good to just let them know early on. Or it can come back and bite you a little bit. And usually if you're just confident in yourself and you're the expert telling the story, like, if you have a good reason for that to happen, like, they're usually going to be good with it. And it's good to have that discussion with them as well, so that they can decide as well and have a bit of input themselves and feel like, again, they have that connection and trust with you. And then yeah, so there's definitely going to be those delays. It's like inevitable. There's going to be weather days. There's going to be gear that breaks or people that cancel. So just flipping back to what we said before, make sure you put in budget contingency and extra time for that. Don't crush yourself into a few days. Yeah, the last one, yeah, for that as well, just decide on plan B. If you're going out to film a character and you're gonna do a bunch of B-roll, and then one day you're gonna do an interview and you're gonna do that inside, like, keep an eye on the weather leading up to it. Like, maybe you have to swap those days around. Just have a plan B and think about the possibilities of what could happen. And sometimes when you're shooting something by yourself or as a small team, that's harder to do. But yeah, I would really recommend trying to build a small team so that you can help each other with those things and you're not trying to juggle absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, jumping on to the next one, Antoine, on you go. So we don't.
Yeah, just on that one, agility is the name of the game. Like even just if like there's big disruptions, like, oh hey, like this thing we thought we were going to be able to do to tell the story isn't going to happen. Always just remember, like, what's the story you're trying to tell? What's the arc? How are you thinking it's going to end? There's always an angle. There's always a way. Like, there's always it's just on the spot. Sometimes things happen really quickly, and it's just like thinking, okay, hang on a second. Maybe this specific thing that I wanted to do is not going to work, but how else can I tell this story? How else can I communicate this or show this? Or like, just always kind of, if you're too dead set on something, I think it can be quite restrictive. So just, yeah, have that like sense of like flexibility and agility to get your story told. But yeah, I could go on for too long about that. Yeah, another thing is just making sure that you're thinking carefully about like how you're dividing roles and coordinating crew and managing your resources. And like when you're going out in the field, I mean, this is everything that you plan like right off the beginning, right from the start. And the reason for that is when you're on your own in particular, you're having to do everything. And like, I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this, but when you're doing an interview on your own and you have to think about the camera, the exposure, the light, maybe you're kind of learning your lighting, or you're getting unlucky with your location, and you're getting interferences with outside light coming in and it's changing and you're worried about that. Or maybe you've got that nailed, but then some construction work starts happening next door and it interferes with the audio, like, and you're trying to conduct an interview and you're asking questions and you're trying to make sure that feels like a conversation for them. It's so draining. Like it's so exhausting. Like, and so having roles like before you even started shooting, where you know what each person is going to be doing before it even happens, so that when the situation arrives, you know that you can like save some of that energy just to focus on like what you're doing, and the other person can do that. It's like it's huge, and obviously it's harder when you're on your own. But yeah, I'm almost tempted to say like, I don't know, like you almost want at least two people, like just for that, just at least for interviews, right? And then what I would say is like an ideal setup when you're out and about shooting. And again, like when you're on your own, you've just got to make it work. You've just got to figure it out the best you can. It's like a really good way to learn actually about like all the stuff that I'm saying right now. Like the reason I'm stressing certain things is from trial and error, but an ideal setup would be to have like someone shooting and someone like let's say you're both directing, like in Sam and I, in my perspective, like when we were shooting this thing, we're both directing, we're both trying to tell the same story, we're both kind of like involved in the story development and like looking out for things, but one of us is more focused on the image and then the other is more focused on just comms with the talent or with anybody else around them, logistics, getting to the next location. And what that actually enables is, again, kind of like in the interview situation, instead of you just getting drained and becoming super tired, you're able to each focus on these like super critical things. So like you're in the middle of shooting a scene, and you got to get your entry shot and your scene and your exit shot and your B-roll and all this stuff that you need. And that's part of this part of the story. Like in your head, that's part of this segment of the story. And that when you do your next scene, that's going to be for this other bit, and you're trying to keep track of what people are saying to see how well it's filling out the story. That's exhausting. Like I'm going in my head thinking about that. If you can then divide that up so that whoever it is, like somebody else with you, is then able to think about as you're shooting, as you're going, like, hang on a second, is there something that the guy with the camera hasn't spotted that'd be really good to go and shoot? Or is there a moment, or is there a thing happening that because they're looking down the lens, they can't see, like, hey, let's go grab that. Let's go grab that. Or like, well, we need to move on and we need to get to this next location. How are we going to do that? And already thinking about that, even between scenes, like just each person being locked in to these different like problem solving tasks, it lifts a massive weight. And you can imagine how if you're on your own, eventually like coffee's only going to take you so far, eventually you're just like, don't know what I'm doing anymore. And if that's the case, if you're on your own, that's okay. That just goes back to like pre-production and development. just plan for the fact that you're gonna get tired. Like there's a film that I saw recently, where this guy was he's filming this character like over the course of, I don't know if it's like 6 months or a year or something. And he just took 2 batteries with him with his camera. And every now and then he'd just pick like a day or two, like here and there, like each month, a day or two, just go film with this character. And just took 2 batteries with him. And then when the batteries were out, that was it. He'd be like, all right, cool, I'm done for today. And that just saved him, like, you know, just going on and on and on and just like filming himself into the ground, right? So anyway, again, loads more I can say about that, but that's kind of like some key bits.
Yeah, so I guess like the kind of last section would be anticipate your post-production and distribution routes kind of early on, and where you're planning to take this. So again, like if it's private or branded sponsorship, think about your deliverables that you have to do for them. Like maybe you have to do some social media work or some photography um or whatever, like build in time for that, and make sure you have time to do that. Like if you're gonna go and need to shoot that separately, like put in time for that, or it can get quite stressful. Um and then obviously like where it's going to be distributed. So think about your different file formats and the platforms that it's going to be on, and just make sure you're filming in the right settings for those distribution routes. And then again with music and color grading and sound and everything, it's very easy to look at the production, like the actual filming section, and forget about the post-production. So just make sure you have enough budget there for the music that you'd like, and depending on the scale of your project, like think about the route that you want to take with that. Like you could, like what we did is we actually worked with local Scottish artists, and these guys were up and coming, and they were just really keen to have their songs on a film. So our agreement with them was like, for now, they'll do it in kind, and then if we receive like more funding for this, like we'd pay them and have an agreement on that. Or you could use Artlist or something like that. If you're on a bigger budget thing, then budget in for your music, because it's going to cost a lot of money if you want really specific bands and artists. And then color grading as well. Like, do you want to do the color grading yourself, and sound design? Do you want to do the sound design yourself, or do you want to get external color grading and sound? Because these things are, if you're an expert in these, you can do them very quickly and very well. And if you're not, and you're trying to wear loads of hats, it's maybe going to take you a bit of time, but it's totally up to you and what you enjoy, you know? If you really love color grading and sound and you have time to do it, then yeah, you can fire on. But just think about that before you dive into everything. And then also just final things like leveling and making sure it's set up for where you're going to show it. Like, are you going to show it in the cinema? Is it going to be shown online? Like, what sort of sound design and mix do you need to do these sorts of things? Yeah, and then I guess like with that, like who's your target market as well? Like and this will just define things like yeah, I don't know, the language that's used in the film, or anything along those lines. Like what age range and what target audience is it suitable for? And yeah, you might have to think about that while you're doing your interviews. There's not too much swearing or whatever for it to go on the correct like broadcasting channel or channel that you want it to go on. But yeah, I feel like we're running out of time a little bit here, so it might be good to just put our key takeaways down from what we learned from. We'll focus on our main doc that we've been working on, Beyond the Island, the surf documentary we've been working on over the past few years. And I'd say that on a very high level, the key takeaways are: have a solid story in a character in a field that you really love, that you're super, super interested in, and that you want to go after, like no matter how big or small your project is. Have a budget plan and a timeline to the best of your ability, and really research this and try and have that outlined. Get the correct insurance and contracts done early. If you, depending on what insurance you need, have a look into it and have the contracts down there too, just so everyone knows what's going on. Develop a paper edit and keep that developing as you move through your project. It's a really easy way to keep track of your budget in terms of like how much the story you've gone through, and also just keep a track of where your story is. Another one would be to look for external help. Look for someone with more experience than you that maybe wants to just come on and give some guidance on your documentary. We've done that and it's been super helpful. Like we probably left it too late. We wanted to do it all ourselves, but it's really helpful to have someone who can come in and be like, you know, it saves you hours of Googling. You just have a call with them and they're like, nah, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's right, do this, do that. And it's so useful. It's like a massive weight off your shoulders sometimes. And the last one is just like plan and budget so you can enjoy it. You know, we've talked a lot about how it gets tiring, but it's so much fun. And especially if you're prepared for it, you know, it's just so much more fun. If you're prepared and everything's going well, that's when it's really fun and you can really get creative and focus on the creative side of things. So yeah, I think that's where we'd probably round it up unless you have any finishing notes there, Antoine.
Nah, just one last thing, which is yeah, all of this like that like massive bucket load of information we just dumped on you guys, like it's a lot to think about. It's definitely like can feel overwhelming and it's a bit daunting. But if you're gonna start making a film, the biggest thing is like just make sure that the character and the story is something that you're ready to like totally fall in love with. Like if you've got this like burn like this, like I have to tell this story. I love what this is, what it could be. I feel like I'm the right person to tell it, you know, whatever it is. Like make sure that all of those feelings are in place before you get going, because it's hard like making a documentary and you know, like finishing it, um showing it to people. Like it's scary, it's daunting, it's exhausting, and there's definitely like guaranteed there's going to be days that are really rough where you're just kind of like yeah, just really struggling unless you follow all these tips to a T. um and yeah, you'll it's just like what drives you through is that passion and that like that burning desire to just like get this thing made and get the story told. So I would just probably start there. Like, you know, if you're debating or you're unsure, if there's any part of you that's hesitating or that's any kind of reluctance or whatever, then maybe you shouldn't make that film. But if it's the opposite, then like go for it. Like, yeah, we'll send you the notes. I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll send you like all these notes, everything we just said, and just send it, go for it, and see how you go. Like ultimately, that's just the best way to learn for most of us is just to try. And even if it doesn't go the way you want, like at least you learned, right? And at least you're doing something really cool. So yeah, all I wanted to add there.
Right, I guess we can just open up for questions 'cause I know we don't have long left, but is it okay if we overrun a little bit, Jessica, or do we have to finish on the hour?
We have to finish on the hour, unfortunately. I'm so sorry.
All good, all good. Let's fire into questions then, just in case anyone has anything.
Connor wants to know when is Beyond the Island due to be released?
Oh, Connor, putting the pressure on there, like nah, all good. We have a timeline because as we said in there, we got a timeline. We're looking at September, October is our current timeline, but again, that depends on budget. You know, like we're trying to secure more budget for this. We didn't follow our own tips in this, and we ended up creating a way bigger documentary than we originally set out to make. So we had to communicate that with our sponsors, and yeah, we're searching for more budget and a way to finish this without putting ourselves out of pocket, you know. So September, October would be the ending, and we're really excited to share it.
Yeah. Yeah, just to note on that, that's why we were stressing like budget and all this stuff like ahead of time. Because when you run out of money, like, you know, this is so time consuming. Like making one of these things is so time consuming. And like the editing aspect of it as well. Like we're talking like weeks and weeks, like months potentially of editing. So obviously you can imagine like the toll that takes on like your bank account and all your other work. So definitely, definitely just be very careful about your budgeting and making sure that you can raise the amount of money that you'll need. That's not to say don't do it, because like we were pretty gung-ho about it and we just like, we're gonna tell the story, we're gonna do it. And we are figuring it out. It's just a hell of a lot easier if you have a plan in place and if you protect yourself that way by going, okay, this is how much I need, so this is how much I need to raise, and then we can start. You know, that's yeah, big one there.
Does
Is there
anyone
anyone
else?
else?
Yeah, any questions? I have to say, Antoine and Sam, we can, if you have any notes, we can include them underneath the video that we're going to be releasing of this so people can get some information. But this has been amazing. I've learned a lot. This has like been an incredible masterclass. You guys have been open and really honest, and you're able to share kind of all the knowledge and wisdom that you've learned along the way and communicate it, which really isn't easy. So both of you, thank you so, so much. Does anyone, we have one more minute. Does anyone, while we have them here, have any burning questions before I ask one?
If they don't, I just like to say, like, there's so much information that's been thrown at you here, and like I'd probably sit and be like, oh my God, like what am I listening to? This sounds crazy. But like 4 years ago, I didn't know any of this. Like I really didn't know much at all. And it's just a journey, and you figure it out, you figure it out as you go and you learn. And yeah, I think just communication and planning is key to that. So don't be put off if you want to just go out and film a small doc and put it on your YouTube channel. You don't need to do half of this stuff, So that's what I was trying to say at the start, is like pick and choose your battles, pick and choose the things that are necessary. But if you want to make something that you're going to get commissioned or put online, then that's when you really have to start thinking about these things. So just so it doesn't.
Really quickly before we go, Peter wants to know how to approach broadcast commissioning editors.
Yeah, do you want to go for it, Antoine, or should I?
Well, as in editors, like, what do you mean? As in like people who can edit your film for you, or?
No, what I mean is the people that are responsible for actually commissioning it, to give you the go-ahead and to say this will be on BBC Two or on Channel 4, Channel 5, CBS, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's something we've definitely been learning about. I think if you're looking for like BBC or someone like that, really try and approach them early on in your project. Because you might be met with, oh, this is too far down the line, like this isn't how we would align it, or maybe they just don't have a space for that specific type of project or narrative. So it's good to know that at the start. But I think just try and get a contact to the BBC, or wherever you're trying to approach, and they are quite easy to find if you look for them, and find the head of commissioning or whoever, or their assistant, and just approach them with a really strong pitch deck that you've put a lot of time into, and a really strong story that you understand, and be confident in yourself, like I think that's key of why you need a good character and a good story that you're passionate about, is because when you go and pitch that to someone, they can feel like your energy around it, and that's what makes it convincing. If you go in and you doubt yourself, then they're not going to believe it. So yeah, like just reach out to them directly with a pitch deck, and if you can, a teaser. I think a teaser really shows like your quality and your story way more than a pitch deck ever could, because it's in your head, but it's really hard to get it into someone else's head.
I'm gonna have to end it there.
Okay.
Sorry,
No
Sam
worries.
and Anton, thank you so much. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. Really, this was like super illuminating. I have pages of notes myself. And you can find this again recorded, and it will be published on Hi's website, so you can go over it all again. And guys, really best of luck to you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye bye.